Alright, what's up everybody, it's Kami and welcome back to Kamimas. This is Kamimas2 because technically last year I didn't actually do Kamimas. I tried to do it and then ended up not doing it because it's a lot of work and I got really lazy unfortunately last year. But here we are, so for those of you that are unaware, Kamimas is my 12 days of Christmas here on the channel. We'll be sitting down doing some unscripted, raw thoughts on some things that you guys can go ahead and ask about, by the way, in the comment section down below. Whether it's about JoJo or any other manga or anything like that, or video games, it doesn't matter. There's no exclusivity. As long as it's something that I'm familiar with, I will talk about it in a short amount of period. In a short amount of time. Honestly, it's ridiculously early. We're keeping that in because I think that it's kind of funny. But anyways, today we're going to be talking about some stands that I think are underused / underrated and should be a little more, I guess, taken into consideration. In the sense that, like, hey, these are really good, or hey, this ability is really good, and it's kind of overlooked. So the first stand that we'll be talking about on this list of underrated stands is everybody's favorite underrated stand to talk about, Hierophant Green. And I actually have a really old video on the channel that I'll probably put at the end of the video as like a little annotation thing that you can click on, where I talked about Kakyoin and Abdul both being underrated and underutilized in Stardust Crusaders, so you can hear a little more in-depth thoughts on that. Hierophant Green is ridiculously strong and it's honestly really underused. Kakyoin doesn't really have too many fights in Stardust Crusaders, and there's a couple situations where he could have maybe done a little better. I know I've also talked about Kakyoin potentially defeating Dio, had he would have possessed Dio and things like that. And there's like a whole bunch of different ways that things could have gone honestly in that fight if it were to somehow start, as long as Kakyoin had the upper hand. But even when Kakyoin had the upper hand with the 20-meter Emerald Splash, or however big it was, I'm forgetting right now at the moment, right before he dies, he, you know, he had the upper hand and Dio still kind of just went and bodied him, so Dio's just that strong. But Hierophant Green can pretty much undo himself into a bunch of different strings that kind of act like ropes to avoid getting hurt, which he shows when he fights Death 13, or when he's making all these strings, like I mentioned just a couple seconds ago, around Dio to kind of just maneuver around his attacks. And he can also use it to, you know, detect enemy movements and things like that. You can tell by the movement of the string, but of course Dio has time stop, so that means nothing to him. There's also the possession, which I think is the most underrated and underused part of the stand, in the fact that Kakyoin can completely control somebody's body by possessing them with Hierophant Green, like he does in the very first fight against Jotaro when he possesses the school nurse. And he's literally completely capable of destroying the person that he possesses internal organs from the inside out as he's possessing them, and if he decides to just stop possessing them, he could literally just destroy them from the inside out and kill them completely. And that's where the whole, oh, maybe Kakyoin could have killed Dio if he possessed him argument comes into play, because if he would have possessed him, then he could have potentially destroyed Dio's brain, and we saw Polnareff almost got Dio's brain, and Dio's like, well, if you would have struck the brain, I would have died. So if Kakyoin would have potentially possessed Dio and killed him from the inside out by destroying all of his internal organs and then destroying his brain, then he could have done it. But we only see him do the possession ability for his very first fight, and then that's it. So I just think that the stand is a little underutilized. This one's not really underutilized, more so underrated, and it's underrated in the sense that the stand is annoying to deal with, and had they not had the circumstances that they had, then they would have kind of been screwed, and that's actually Cheap Trick. The Cheap Trick is an automatic stand that just attaches to somebody's back, and it'll sit there and say a bunch of weird stuff to them and taunt them over and over, and it tries to get people to look at the person that it's possessing's back, and if somebody looks at their back, then they end up dying. And because Cheap Trick is an automatic stand, it's always just going to stay on its target. I believe it has an A in durability, so it's pretty much just something that you can't get rid of no matter how hard you try, unless you end up getting rid of it the way Rohan does with the ghost hands in the alleyway, which is why I say, you know, it was a very situational thing for them to actually get rid of Cheap Trick. But aside from this, I don't think that they would have been able to get rid of Cheap Trick, because Cheap Trick's user technically also just changes every single time it goes from person to person, since he just latches onto people, so you can't really go and kill the user to get rid of Cheap Trick, because Cheap Trick also would have already killed the old user had it transferred over to a new person. So it's just a really annoying stand that you can't really get rid of unless you have extremely specific circumstances, like probably Gold Experience Requiem. Not even probably, Gold Experience Requiem could definitely get rid of it. But if they didn't have the alleyway with the ghost hands literally pull off Cheap Trick and throw him into hell, and diamond is unbreakable, and I don't think that they would get rid of the stand. And the last stand I want to talk about today, because again I said that these are going to be short, is actually Limp Bizkit. So Limp Bizkit actually enables the stand user to bring the dead back to life as quote-unquote zombies. They're just invisible corpses that are going around, and they are capable of walking on walls. They have permanent invisibility, and they also have enhanced strength. And this stand ability works even when the user dies, and it actually gets a little stronger when the user dies. So you kind of just have to sit there and punch a bunch of invisible ghosts, quote-unquote zombies, that are attacking you. Not to mention all these zombies are extremely hyper aggressive and can just be really annoying. I think Limp Bizkit is just one of those stands where it's really strong, and I think most people would not pay attention to it because they just don't like part 6, but it's definitely a really good ability. Because Limp Bizkit can literally revive anything that's dead and turn them into a lifeless, invisible zombie that just goes after you and tries to attack you over and over. Because we see it happen with alligators and stuff like that. So it's just a really strong stand ability overall. Anyways, let me know what you guys think are some underrated or underused or underutilized, whatever word you want to use for it, stands throughout all of JoJo down below in the comments, as well as whatever other video topic you want to suggest for the next Kamimas Day. I'll be working on these over the next 12 days, every day up until Christmas, and then on Christmas I'll have a big video. We're also getting close to 8,000 subscribers as of recording this, so if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Follow me on Twitter @FrayKugel and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SuperKamiGaming, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.